My family put me up for adoption when I was born. Now they expect me to support them in their old age and buy my twin brother a house so he can get married. I was 28 when I got the message that changed everything. It came from a Facebook account with no profile picture. The name meant nothing to me, and the message itself was only one sentence. I think I'm your birth mother. Please give me one chance to explain. I stared at my phone for a solid minute before setting it face down on the table. I'd always known I was adopted. My parents, my real parents in every way that mattered, never hid it from me. They celebrated the day they adopted me every year instead of treating it like some family secret. They answered every question I had growing up without making me feel guilty for asking. The only thing they never knew was who my biological family actually was. The adoption had been closed. So seeing that message felt surreal. I ignored it for almost 2 weeks, then another message arrived. No, this is difficult. I only want to tell you why. Curiosity got the better of me. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe halfway between our towns. I almost turned around 3 different times before walking inside. She recognized me immediately. She stood up with tears in her eyes before I even reached the table. Dreamed about this moment for 28 years. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. Not because I hated her, because she was a complete stranger. She looked embarrassed before quietly sitting back down. Sorry, I just got carried away. The next hour, she talked almost nonstop. She explained that she had been very young, that life had been difficult, that she wasn't ready to raise a baby. Some of what she said sounded sincere, some of it felt rehearsed. I mostly listened. Then she said something that completely caught me off guard. You weren't the only baby. I frowned. What do you mean? She looked down at her coffee. You have a twin brother. I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Twin, she nodded. We couldn't afford to raise 2 bobbies. I felt like the room suddenly became very quiet. For 28 years, I'd believed I entered this world alone. Now I was learning that somewhere out there was someone who shared my birthday. My DNA. Maybe even my face. I didn't know what to say. She smiled through her tears. He knows about you. That surprised me even more. He does. He's wanted to meet you for years. A week later, she arranged the meeting. His name was Daniel. The resemblance was unsettling. We had different hairstyles, different clothes, different expressions, but there was no denying we were twins. He laughed first. This is weird. I laughed too. It really is. A moment. It actually felt nice. We compared childhood stories, favorite foods, jobs, hobbies. He joked that I'd somehow ended up taller despite being born only minutes after him. It almost felt natural, almost, until our biological mother interrupted. You know, she smiled at both of us. Seeing my children together makes all the pain worth it. Something about the way she said my children made me uncomfortable. I couldn't explain why. I brushed it off. Over the next month, we met a few more times. I kept my adoptive parents updated about everything to their credit. They never tried to stop me. My mom simply said, just remember that meeting someone biologically doesn't automatically make them family. Let people earn that place in your life. At the time, I thought she was just being protective. I didn't realize how right she would turn out to be. The first request sounded harmless. Our biological mother called one evening. I was wondering if you could help your brother. What kind of help? His car broke down. I hesitated. Only known him for a month. I know, she said quickly, but family helps family. That sentence stayed with me. Family helps family. Eventually, I agreed to pay for part of the repair. Daniel thanked me. He even promised to pay me back. He never did. I didn't mention it. People fall on hard times. I understood that. A few weeks later, another request came, then another. And every single conversation ended with the exact same phrase. Family helps family. At first, it was small things. A phone bill, a security deposit, a medical expense. Each request was presented as if saying no would make me the bad person. Whenever I hesitated, our biological mother would sigh dramatically. I just thought you'd want a relationship with us. That sentence always made me feel guilty, so I kept saying yes. I convinced myself we were simply making up for lost time. I had no idea that the biggest request was still coming. I sat on my couch staring at my banking app. In just 4 months, I'd transferred them more money than I'd ever lent anyone in my life. Not once had anyone mentioned paying me back. Not once had anyone asked how I was doing. Every phone call followed the same pattern. They'd chat for a few minutes, ask about work just long enough to sound interested, and then somehow the conversation would drift toward a bill, an expense, or something Daniel really needed. I started noticing something else. If I didn't answer my biological mother's calls, she'd immediately text, "Are you okay?" If I replied that I was busy, another message would come. "Call me when you can, it's important." 9 times out of 10, important meant money. One Saturday, she invited me over for lunch. Made your favorite dishes, she said excitedly. I almost laughed. You don't know what my favorite dishes are. There was a brief silence. Oh, well, you'll like them anyway. That should have been my first clue. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt strangely formal. The dining table was covered with food. Daniel was already there, dressed far nicer than usual. There was another woman sitting beside him. She smiled politely. This is my fiancé, Emily. I congratulated them. She seemed genuinely kind, and for a while the afternoon felt surprisingly pleasant. We talked about work, movies, and wedding ideas. I actually found myself relaxing. Then Emily excused herself to answer a phone call. The moment she stepped outside, my biological mother leaned forward. So, I immediately recognized that tone. There is something we wanted to discuss. Daniel suddenly became very interested in his plate. Our landlord is selling the house, my biological mother said. Oh, they'll have to move. That's unfortunate. She nodded dramatically. It really is. I waited, she smiled. But maybe this happened for a reason. I already knew where this was going. I don't follow. She folded her hands together. Doing very well financially. I didn't answer. Daniel is starting a family. Still, I stayed quiet. It would mean so much if you could help him buy a house. For a second, I genuinely thought she'd said help with a down payment. Then she continued. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, just something modest. Around 3 bedrooms. I blinked. A house, Daniel finally spoke. Would really give us stability. I looked from him to her and back again. Asking me to buy you a house? It's not just for me, Daniel replied quickly. It's for my future wife and eventually our children. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Known me for 4 months. My biological mother reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Known you since the day you were born. I gently pulled my hand away. That's not the same thing. Her smile faded. I carried you for 9 months. I understand. I brought you into this world. I understand. So surely you can understand why I feel comfortable asking. I said calmly, I don't. Room became very quiet. Daniel sighed loudly. I knew she'd react like this. I turned toward him. Like what? Like we're strangers. I stared at him in disbelief. We are strangers. His jaw tightened. We're blood. I took a slow breath. And he looked genuinely offended. You really don't care about family. That sentence stung more than I expected. Not because it was true. Because it came from someone who had never spent a single birthday with me, never checked on me when I was sick, never celebrated a graduation, never called just to ask how my week was going. He expected the benefits of family without any of the history. My biological mother wiped away a tear. I prayed every day that I'd find you. I didn't doubt that she had. But prayers and expectations weren't the same thing, she continued softly. I thought we'd finally become a family. I wanted that too, I admitted. Becoming a family doesn't start with asking someone to buy a house. Daniel pushed his chair back. So that's your answer? My answer is no. He laughed bitterly. I can't believe this. You've got a great job. You own your own place. You don't even have children. I frowned. Why do you need all that money? The question hung in the air. As if my savings needed to be justified. As if my financial stability automatically belonged to someone else. I realized then that they weren't asking because they had no other options. They were asking because they believed I was the easiest solution. And when I refused, disappointment quickly turned into resentment. Daniel shook his head slowly as if I'd just failed some invisible test. I guess money really changes people. I stared at him. You don't know me well enough to say that. He scoffed. Know enough. I replied, you know what Mom has told you about me. The word Mom slipped out before I could stop it. My biological mother smiled hopefully. You called me Mom. I sighed. It wasn't intentional. Smile disappeared just as quickly. Had a wonderful life, she said quietly. Surely you can share some of your blessings. Worked for everything I have. You had opportunities. So did plenty of other people. Daniel folded his arms. Easy for you to say. I looked at him. You don't know how I grew up. He frowned. What do you mean? My adoptive parents weren't wealthy. That surprised both of them. We weren't rich, I continued. My parents saved for years before buying our house. They worked overtime, they skipped vacations, they taught me to save instead of spending every paycheck. Neither of them said anything. So no, I said. I wasn't handed an easy life, I built one. My biological mother looked disappointed. I thought you'd understand. Do understand. You don't. I understand that you're worried about Daniel, she nodded. I also understand that you're asking me to solve a problem that isn't mine. Daniel stood up. You know what? Forget it. I already have, he laughed without humor. Must be nice. What? Having parents who actually wanted you. The words landed like a punch. For a second, nobody spoke. Even my biological mother looked shocked. Daniel, she whispered. But he didn't take it back. Instead, he doubled down. I spent my whole life watching Mom struggle. I answered quietly. And whose decision was it to put me up for adoption? Silence. I didn't make that choice. No one answered. You can't ask me to carry the guilt for a decision I had no part in. Daniel grabbed his car keys. This conversation is over. He walked out, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I looked at my biological mother. She didn't apologize. Instead, she rubbed her temples. He's under a lot of pressure. I almost smiled. So am I. He's just emotional. I noticed. You shouldn't hold it against him. I stood. I think we're done for today. She followed me to the front door. Before I could leave, she reached for my arm. Don't give up on us. Not giving up. Then prove it. I looked at her. How? Help your brother. There it was again. Everything always came back to money, not my feelings, not getting to know each other, not building trust. Money. I gently removed her hand from my sleeve. I hope Daniel has a beautiful wedding. Truly mean that. I won't be buying him a house. Her face hardened for the first time since we'd met. You know, her voice became colder. I never imagined my own daughter would turn out this selfish. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't because the words hurt. It was because I finally understood something. Every kind word, every invitation, every tear, every attempt to reconnect had been tied to an expectation. The moment I stopped meeting that expectation, I became the villain. I drove home in complete silence. That evening, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again. And again, the family group chat, one I barely participated in, had suddenly become very active. Daniel had sent the first message. Thanks for proving that money matters more to you than family. Few relatives I'd never met chimed in. Your mother sacrificed so much. She's getting older. You'll regret treating her this way. Brother only asked because he trusted you. I stared at the screen in disbelief. People I'd never spoken to were judging my character based on one side of the story. I typed a reply, then deleted it. There was no point arguing with people who had already decided who the villain was. I muted the chat, set my phone down, and tried to enjoy the rest of my evening. I should have known they weren't finished. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls, not from one person. From 6 different numbers. Some belonged to relatives I'd never met. Others weren't even saved in my contacts. Before I could process that, another call came in. It was my biological mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? She didn't even ask how I was. Been trying to reach you. I noticed. Are you ignoring your family? I closed my eyes. I was asleep. You could have called back. I was going to. She sighed dramatically. Changed. I almost laughed. Known me for 4 months. There was a long silence, then she lowered her voice. I don't have many years left. I frowned. What does that have to do with anything? I just wanted to spend time with my daughter before I'm gone. Never said I didn't want to spend time together. Then why won't you help your brother? There it was again. Every conversation eventually circled back to the same request. I answered carefully. Because spending time together and buying someone a house are 2 completely different things. She sounded hurt. So that's all we're worth to you? No, I replied. But I think you're measuring my love by what I'm willing to pay. She didn't answer. Instead, she quietly said, I carried you for 9 months. I know, I gave you life. I know, you'll always be my daughter. I understand that. So why are you treating me like a stranger? I took a deep breath. Because we're still getting to know each other. She became emotional. You had another mother your whole life. Never got that chance. I understand. Don't I deserve something? The question caught me off guard. Deserve what? A chance. You had one. I mean, a real chance. I stayed silent. She continued. Families help each other. Helped. Not enough. That sentence settled everything for me. Not enough. No matter how much I'd already done, there would always be another request, another emergency, another reason why I should give more. I ended the call politely. Need some time. Before she could respond, I hung up. For the first time since meeting them, I felt relieved. That relief didn't last long. Around lunchtime, one of my coworkers walked over holding her phone. Everything okay? Why? She hesitated. I think someone tagged you on Facebook. I hadn't used Facebook much in years. Curious, I opened the app. There it was, a long public post from Daniel. He never mentioned my name directly, but every detail made it obvious it was about me. He wrote about a successful sibling who had forgotten where they came from. He claimed that money had made me cold. He ended the post with, some people are blessed with everything but still refuse to help the people who gave them life. Hundreds of reactions, dozens of comments, most of them agreed with him. That's heartbreaking. Blood should stick together. Money changes people. She realizes her mistake before it's too late. Knew my side. Nobody knew I'd already helped financially. Nobody knew we'd only known each other for a few months. They simply accepted the version that made him look like the victim. I considered responding. Instead, I closed the app. By evening, I received another message. This time from Emily, Daniel's fiancée. I expected another lecture. Instead, it read, "I'm sorry about everything that's happening. I don't think this should have been posted online." I stared at the screen. It was the first message from anyone in that family that didn't ask me for something. I thanked her. She replied almost immediately. "I don't know everything, but I do know that relationships shouldn't be built around expectations." I read that sentence 3 times. It was simple, but it perfectly described what had been bothering me since the very beginning. Every interaction had come with strings attached. And once I finally admitted that to myself, I realized I had a difficult decision to make. Not about the money, about whether these were people I could ever truly trust. A few days passed without any contact. For the first time in months, my phone was quiet. I went to work, met friends for dinner, visited my adoptive parents over the weekend, and slowly started feeling like myself again. Then, on Sunday afternoon, my dad looked at me over a cup of tea. "You seem lighter." I blocked a few numbers. He smiled. "Sometimes peace is the result of a difficult decision." I nodded. "Just keep wondering if I did the right thing." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question. "If they had never asked you for money, would you still want a relationship with them?" "Yes." "If you had no money at all, do you think they'd still be trying this hard to stay in touch?" That question stayed with me for the rest of the day. I honestly didn't know the answer, but I had a feeling I already knew. The following Friday, I came home from work and froze. A familiar car was parked outside my apartment building. Standing beside it were my biological mother and Daniel. Neither of them had told me they were coming. As soon as my biological mother saw me, she rushed over with a relieved smile. "There you are," I frowned. "How did you find my address?" "Oh," she hesitated. "One of your relatives mentioned the area and we asked around." That answer made me uncomfortable. Daniel crossed his arms. "Been ignoring us." I asked for space. "You've had enough space." I unlocked the building's front door but stayed outside. "What do you want?" My biological mother looked around nervously. "Can we talk privately?" "We can talk here," she sighed. "I don't want the neighbors listening." "They're not." Daniel stepped forward. "We drove 3 hours to see you." "I'm aware. Least you can do is hear us out." I looked at the time on my phone. "You have 10 minutes." My biological mother reached into her handbag and pulled out a folder. She smiled hopefully. "We've been looking at houses." I blinked. "Houses?" She opened the folder as if she were presenting exciting vacation brochures. "This one is affordable." She pointed at the pictures. "And this neighborhood is perfect for raising children." I stared at the glossy pages. "You actually went house shopping," she nodded. "We thought if you saw the options, you'd understand." I slowly closed the folder. "Already answered." Daniel's patience snapped. "You didn't even look properly." "I don't need to." "You haven't even considered what this would mean for us." "I have." "You haven't." He pointed toward the apartment building behind me. "You get to come home to this every night." "I worked for it." "I work too." "I know. So why is it wrong for my family to help me?" "It isn't." He looked confused. "What?" I said there's nothing wrong with family helping each other. His face brightened, then I finished my sentence. "But help has to be given freely, not demanded." His smile disappeared. My biological mother suddenly began to cry, not quietly, loud enough that several people walking past slowed down to look. "I just wanted my children together." I lowered my voice. "So did I." "Then why are you pushing us away?" "I'm not pushing you away. Feels like it." I replied gently. "I'm pushing away expectations." She covered her face with her hands. "Already lost one daughter once." Words were clearly meant to make me feel responsible. Instead, they made me sad because I realized she truly believed this situation was entirely my fault. Daniel shook his head. "I can't believe you're making Mom cry." "Not making anyone cry." "You are." "No, I'm setting a boundary." He laughed bitterly. Boundary. He almost spat the word out. "That's what people say when they don't want to help." I stayed calm. "No, it's what people say when they don't want to be controlled." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my biological mother wiped away her tears. Her expression changed completely. The sadness was gone. In its place was disappointment. "If this is your final answer." "It is." "Then don't expect us to keep reaching out." I nodded slowly. "I won't." She looked surprised, almost as if she expected me to panic and change my mind. Instead, I simply wished them both well. I hope your wedding is beautiful, Daniel. I genuinely mean that. He didn't respond. He turned around, got into the car, and slammed the door. A few seconds later, they drove away without another word. I stood there for a long time, watching the car disappear around the corner. I had a feeling that wasn't the end of it. People who believe they're entitled to your life rarely accept no the first time. And deep down, I suspected the next move wouldn't be another request. It would be an attempt to make everyone else believe I was the villain. The very next week, my phone started buzzing again. Only this time, it wasn't from my biological mother or Daniel. It was from people I barely knew, a distant aunt, an older cousin, even someone who introduced himself as my biological mother's childhood friend. Every conversation followed the same script. You only get one birth mother. Money comes and goes, but family is forever. Brother is trying to start a family. You've been blessed. Why can't you share that blessing? No one asked how I felt. No one asked what had actually happened. They had already heard one version of the story, and apparently that was enough. I stopped answering unknown numbers. A few days later, I got a call from Emily. I almost didn't pick up. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, sounding nervous. "Can we meet for coffee, just once?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. She looked exhausted when she arrived, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked like someone carrying a burden she didn't ask for. "I wanted to apologize," she said before we even ordered. "You don't owe me an apology." "I kind of do." She looked down at her coffee. "I didn't know they were asking you to buy us a house." I stayed quiet. "They told me they were only asking if you could help with some wedding expenses." That caught me completely off guard. "What?" She nodded. "I found out the truth after Daniel left his laptop open. I saw messages between him and your mother talking about which houses they should show you." Let out a slow breath. "So you had no idea?" "None." She looked embarrassed. When I confronted him, he said I didn't understand because I wasn't real family. Couldn't help but shake my head. Emily gave a sad smile. "I told him that expecting someone you've only known for a few months to buy a house isn't normal." "What did he say?" "He said you owed him because you were the successful twin." I stared at her. "The successful twin?" She nodded. "He kept saying that your life turned out better, so it was only fair for you to help balance things." The first time, I understood where Daniel's resentment came from. This wasn't really about a house. It was about comparison. Somewhere along the way, he had convinced himself that my success somehow came at his expense. Emily sighed. "I don't think he'll change his mind." "I'm sorry." "So am I." She finished her coffee before quietly saying, "I don't think we're getting married anymore." I looked up. "What happened?" "He told me that if I really loved him, I'd support him no matter what." She gave a small, tired laugh. I realized he wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for someone who would always agree with him. Week later, I heard through another relative that the engagement had been called off. Predictably, I became the scapegoat. According to my biological mother, if I had simply agreed to help, none of this would have happened. I couldn't believe it. Their relationship problems had somehow become my fault. That was the moment I finally understood something my adoptive mother had once told me. Some people don't want solutions. They want someone to blame. And in their story, I had become the perfect villain. Months passed. I didn't contact them. They didn't contact me directly either. For a while, I thought everyone had finally moved on. Then, one Saturday morning, I got an unexpected call from my biological mother's neighbor. We had met only once when I visited her house. "I hope you don't mind me calling," she said. "I just thought you should know what's being said about you." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Your mother has been telling people that you abandoned her after she tried to reconnect with you." I closed my eyes. I figured something like that might happen. "She also tells people that you promised to take care of the family and then changed your mind." "Never promised anything." "I know. That's why I thought you should hear it from someone else." I thanked her for letting me know. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time. It was strange. Months earlier, hearing those rumors would have devastated me now. I just felt tired. I couldn't spend my life correcting stories told by people determined not to tell the truth. A few weeks later, I ran into Daniel completely by chance. I was leaving a grocery store when I heard someone call my name. I turned around. He looked different. More stressed, older somehow. For a second, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "Can we talk?" Part of me wanted to keep walking. Instead, I nodded. We stood near the parking lot in awkward silence. "I heard about the wedding," I said. He shrugged. "It is what it is." "I'm sorry it didn't work out." He looked at me carefully, almost like he was trying to figure out whether I meant it. "You really are." I am. Another silence, then he sighed. I blamed you. I know. It was easier than admitting I was angry at my own situation. I didn't interrupt. I kept thinking. If our lives had been switched, maybe I'd have everything you have. I shook my head. You don't know that. I know, he looked down. Spent months comparing my life to yours. Where did that get you? A small, humorless smile crossed his face. Nowhere. The first time since we'd met, he wasn't demanding anything. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't trying to guilt me. He just looked exhausted. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quietly. Appreciate the apology, he nodded. But Mom still thinks you owe us. That didn't surprise me. I figured. Tried talking to her. And she says a mother should never have to ask twice. I sighed. That's unfortunate. He looked genuinely conflicted. I don't know if she'll ever let this go. Can't control that. He extended his hand. I hope one day we can at least be civil. I looked at his hand for a moment before shaking it. I'd like that. We went our separate ways. As I walked back to my car, I realized something. Not every relationship has to end with shouting. Sometimes people grow. Sometimes they don't. Daniel had at least taken one step toward accepting responsibility. My biological mother, however, still believed love could be measured by sacrifice and financial support. I couldn't change her mind, and I had finally stopped trying. For years, I wondered why my biological family came back into my life. I used to think it was fate. Now I think it was a lesson. DNA can explain where you come from. It cannot, by itself, build trust, respect, or love. Those things have to be earned. And no amount of emotional pressure can create them overnight. In the end, I didn't lose a family. I simply learned the difference between the family that raised me and the people who happened to share my blood.